Hi everyone, today we're talking about conflict. What is conflict? It's certainly more than an intellectual debate or disagreement. Conflict is about a real emotional impact, and with conflict there's often a threat to the relationship. So if we're talking about threats, let's think back to the far gone days when our ancestors lived in caves and tigers roamed the plains. In those days there was constant threat, be it physical or social. It was a case of eat or be eaten. And in that kind of situation, the most primitive part of our brain kicks in, the amygdala. It's the reptilian brain, and it responds in one of three ways. It either causes us to fight, let's get going with that tiger, or it causes us to freeze. In other words, we don't have any sort of reaction or response, we're stuck, or it causes us to flee, we run away. And the same holds true today. So when we're in a threatening situation, and conflict is a threatening situation, our amygdala causes us to respond in one of these three different ways. And it's only after that reaction has taken place that we have a choice about how we want to deal with the conflict. And in that instance, it comes down to a decision around two key aspects. The first one is relationship. So how important is this relationship to you? The second factor that comes into consideration is the issue. How important is this particular issue? And then we have one of four different choices. So if we decide the relationship is not important and the issue is not important, we might choose to avoid. Okay, but there's really only one sort of situation where this is the right type of choice. Road rage comes to mind. So we don't know the person, they don't matter to us. And if we think about it, this is one traffic incident in a long day of many other things going on. So is it really worth getting upset about? So in that case, choose to avoid. If we decide the issue is really important, but the relationship is not that important, we might choose to advocate. If we're advocating, we're telling the other person that they're not important to us, we're more important to them, and our issue is really important. If we do this too often with our teams, we might become known as a dictator. Okay. In this block over here, we decide this relationship is really, really important, but the issue is not that important. And we choose to accommodate. This block, often known as the marriage box, because we often accommodate in our partnerships. If we think of an example around this, if you want Italian for dinner on Friday night and your partner wants Chinese, you might say, okay, let's go with Chinese for a change because the relationship is really, really important to you. The problem comes in when you do this too often, because then you'll probably be seen as a pushover. Now the dynamic between the accommodate block and the advocate block is really quite interesting. Because what happens here is if we're working with our clients and we go out there and we promise them the world, they have unrealistic demands, we promise them we'll meet their deadlines. What happens is that we come back in and we then need to advocate to our team about getting that stuff done. So our team might need to work overtime, they might need to meet unrealistic demands, and that sends a really bad message to them that they're not important and the client is more important than them. So very important to think about the dynamic between these two different areas. Now this is the golden ticket up here. If we decide to take this approach, what we're talking about is collaborating. Now what does it really take to collaborate? Because if you choose this route, you're saying both the issue and the relationship are really, really key. But if we want to go this route, we need to first let go of the stories in our heads. Now, I'm sure you can all relate to this. We've all got somebody in mind that we've made up a story about. They're the unreliable person. They're unrealistic. They're such a diva. We use all sorts of negative words to describe this particular person when we're in conflict with them. Because if we didn't, we would have to be the one in the wrong, and that would just be really, really weird. So, if we've got the story in our head, but we decide we want to operate in this collaborate box, we need to let go of that story and approach that other person with the intention of really understanding what's going on in their world. And the first part of that is naming the fact that this relationship isn't working. Then it's about really listening, putting aside your own judgments, your own agenda, and really trying to understand what's going on for them. But it doesn't mean that you operate as a pushover. It doesn't mean that you simply apologize, and hope that eventually they'll say everything's all right. No, at some point in the conversation, it will be about you putting across a point of view and doing so in a non-defensive way, but which clearly states your position on something. And it's about being persistent, because it's particularly in passive-aggressive situations, it's unlikely that the person will admit up front that there's something wrong with the relationship. So if you really want to resolve it, you'll need to work with them on it and make sure they understand how important it is to you to resolve the situation. But a lot of people that I talk to say, well, this is business. We just need to get on with stuff. Conflict might be there, but people need to get over themselves, and we tend to avoid. The problem with that is that we're actually losing out on productivity. So a recent study by Harvard has shown that more than 20% of productivity per week is lost due to unresolved conflict. If you think about it, that's more than a day every single week due to the fact that we haven't taken the time to resolve conflict with somebody in our business or in our personal lives. So that's my challenge to you. Who is the person that you next want to resolve conflict with, and which choice will you make on this particular matrix? Good luck.